you're completely engulfed into the culture. That's what it is. You're just either you're in or you're out. I mean, it's you're completely engulfed by the culture, and this kind of takes up a lot of who you are and what you are in many ways. You try to redefine that as you get older. You know what I'm saying? But in your youth, you really dive into this with 2 feet.
You've spent an entire career fighting fires.
But so that was a good time. We had some good times there. Socks on, socks off. So challenge your shift. So y'all sleep with your socks on, or you sleep with your socks off?
I enjoyed the challenge of coming up to a chaotic scene and bringing some reason and calm to that.
And rescuing the injured, sick, and dying.
To the point where we'd be on box alarms, and somebody or two would be like, "Hey man, do you do anything other than teller?"
It's different now. You're an officer. You're responsible for these people. Okay, you're going to be taking into these buildings. You need to make the right decisions.
But that's all over now.
Have a network, have the ability to reach out, and it is very much important for leadership to say it is okay not to be okay.
What do you do when the sirens stop?
The passion I had to be the best master firefighter on Truck 25 is absolutely nothing compared to my passion for peer support.
You've hung up your gear.
Because my definition was, I'm a fireman. Like, I'm a captain, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a this, I'm a that.
And you walk out of the firehouse for the last time.
At the end of the day, like, this is our profession and it's our career. Like, we're not here to be friends. Like, yeah, it's great if we're friends, but we should be close because we both take this job seriously and we're both invested into learning the craft and doing the craft the best that we can for the people that we serve.
What do you do with your life when the smoke clears?
Welcome back to the When the Smoke Clears podcast. I am Russell Miles. I'm here with Tony Ben-Cosme. Thanks again for joining us with someone who has finished their career in the fire service and is now on the other side living to tell the tale. But this is a very different episode of the When the Smoke Clears podcast.
Absolutely.
This is our first non-fire department guest. And even though he was not a firefighter, he was very integral to the establishment of the Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service as we know it. And especially many of the younger people probably wouldn't know his name, but we wouldn't be here as a service without him and his contribution to the service. So Tony's going to tell us a little bit more about our guest.
Yeah, our next guest, this is a pleasure for me. I remember being a young Fire 3 and seeing this gentleman take charge. And I was, new. I mean, I had been in maybe 2 years, 3 years. So I was barely a Fire 3. This gentleman, I consider him one of the pillars of the foundation that is the Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Services building now that exists in Montgomery County as a fire service. He was an integral part of having us become who we are now. And listen, I could keep telling you more about him. Thank you for listening again. But without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce the Montgomery County, retired Montgomery County Fire Administrator, 25 years in Montgomery County, was 9 years as the Montgomery County Fire Administrator. Before that, he was a deputy county manager. Before that, Division Chief of Ride-On Transit Service. So he spent a lot of time in Montgomery County, up and down the government. So he knew what he was doing. He knew how to hit all the levers. He was the perfect man for the job. Without further ado, Gordon Aoyagi. Thank you, brother, for coming with us. It's a pleasure.
Well, aloha to everybody from Hawaii and to all my friends in Montgomery County. I wish you well, and I miss you.
And yes, we needed to mention that Gordon is coming to us from Hawaii. Yeah. There is a massive time difference. We're recording this at 12:30 p.m. our time. It is 6:30 a.m. his
Yes.
time,
He's
correct?
an early riser. Yeah.
So thank you so much for being willing to get up early and talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Sure. Happy I could do this.
So usually the way we get these interviews started is we have our guests tell us a little bit about where they were born and where they grew up. And so we'd like to do the same for you. Tell us a little bit about where you were born and where you grew up and what life was like for you coming up as a young man.
Well, thank you. And again, I do appreciate having this opportunity to talk to you all. By way of introduction, I'm Gordon Aoyagi. I'm a third generation immigrant of Japanese ancestry. In other words, my parents were born in America and then I was born. So that's how we get to the three generations. I was raised in Colorado, but born in Dayton, Ohio. And the reason being is that my parents were incarcerated during World War II because they were Japanese Americans and they were removed from the West Coast. And so they were placed in an internment camp in Gila, Arizona. My dad, with the help of Quakers, was able to find a job in Dayton, Ohio. And then my mother subsequently joined him. I was born, and then because, again, my dad was Japanese Americans, one of the generals who just came into being in Ohio decided that Japanese Americans shouldn't be working for national defense industry. And in that case, my dad was working for National Cash Register with a German supervisor, as he mentions. But he lost his job in spite of his German supervisor saying, wait a minute, he's doing a good job. It so happened that in Colorado, the governor at the time was the only governor in the nation who was welcoming Japanese Americans to come and work in Colorado. And so my dad and my mother left Dayton, and then I moved, I think, somewhere between 3 to 6 months is what my dad said. So I consider myself a Colorado native. I grew up in an area, and what typically happens to a lot of immigrant people is they move into familiar grounds and they try to build a community with each other. So there was a little Japan town around downtown Denver. That's where I grew up. Went to Center City schools. And from there went to Colorado College, a small liberal arts college in Colorado Springs. And living in as a child in Denver, a very diverse community, predominantly Hispanic and African American and Japanese. And of course, we grew up not knowing any difference. To us, we were all Americans. So it was a great fun time for me at the time. And I think back on those times very fondly. After college, I served in the U.S. Army.
Oh, you did?
Left the Army, yeah. As a veteran, served as a military intelligence officer in Vietnam. Came back, came back, got my master's degree from the University of Colorado, and then proceeded to work in government, local government. I say I followed in the steps of Barack Obama because he was a community development organizer. And that was one of my first jobs in Denver, was to be a community development organizer for a program to talk about how to improve housing in the center city. That grew into my interest in environmental planning, and I became an urban planner for the Regional Transportation District. And from there, went into operations. So I became the manager of the Denver Boulder inner city bus system and the bus systems for Boulder and Longmont. In transit, to go up, you had to go out. So from there, I became an executive director of the transit system in West Westport, Connecticut, then went out to Salem, Oregon, to a newly created Salem Area Transit District. And then I saw an ad for Montgomery County, Maryland, to be the transit
Wow.
division chief. And so I said, wow, the information there was Montgomery County was going to be extending out the red line from Bethesda out to Germantown. So I saw that as a good opportunity to get there from the ground up and help with the bus service to feed into the red line as it extended all the way out to Germantown. Oh, not Germantown. Anyway, wherever it is, Shady Grove. There you go.
Shady Grove. Shady Grove.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was hired as a transit manager and was just having the time of my life. I didn't realize that working for Montgomery County, there was no struggle in terms of funding. In all the other previous places, getting funding for mass transit was a real issue. And suddenly I walked in and they said, well, gee, here's $100,000 for marketing. Well, will that help? And I said, never had that much money before. That's really great. So, yeah, I was really enjoying myself in transit services. As luck would have it, a new county executive was elected. I don't know if you remember him, but Neil Potter.
Neil Potter. Yeah.
Yep. And his chief administrative officer, at the end of a budget session, came up to me and said, hey, Gordon, would you have any interest at all in leaving transit? I'd like to have you become my deputy. And I thought, that's interesting. I love government. It would sort of expand my portfolio in learning about other things in government. And when you're in transit at the stage of being in a medium-sized city, your desire is to eventually operate a big system like Philadelphia or Washington, D.C. or something. So my theory was if I learned a lot about government, I would learn about the complexity and thus be eligible when a bigger transit system to open up, I could become a general manager. So I jumped at the opportunity to work as a deputy. I was having the time of my life. My portfolio there was really good. I had economic development. I had a little bit of public safety. I had public health. I had labor relations. So I was really enjoying that. Then Doug was elected.
Yeah.
Bruce Romer came on as the CAO, and I was fortunate to be able to work with them. Then council, something happened with fire rescue. I can't remember, and council got a little upset with the current structure. And the structure at the time was Chief Grover was a volunteer chief, but he was chief of the Department of Fire Rescue. And underneath him were all the volunteer chiefs. And then he also had a staff, an operations staff. I can't remember all the different functions that were performed under Grover, but there was a lot of turmoil between career and volunteer at the time. So council adopted new legislation. And the new legislation created an organization called the Montgomery County Fire Rescue Service. Mm-hmm. And under that structure, they said, well, let's bring in a fire administrator. And the fire administrator would be chair of the fire board, made up of, as I recall, how did that work? Anyway, we had a total of 4 citizens and 3 career people who were appointed to our. And the fire administrator was responsible for developing policy through the fire board.
Okay.
I do not know how I was suddenly drawn into this new organization.
They picked you out of nowhere.
Yeah. Bruce was interviewing, and he told me later, he had done a nationwide search to try to look for a fire administrator. The name was very confusing to a lot of the career chiefs who were very interested in operating one of the largest fire services on the East Coast.
Yes.
But he said they had the perspective of a career chief, and therefore they brought with them the notion of control, of being able to operate a big city fire department.
You want to be a fire chief, basically.
Yeah. He said there were a lot of other people who had worked in volunteer departments, and they were a little confused by the size of the organization and the relationship between career and volunteer. And the volunteer chiefs, as they said, often thought that they were going to become a big city chief as well. So Bruce came to me and he says, Gordon, would you have any interest in being the fire administrator? You know policy so well, and you've worked with, policy boards that maybe you can really help us put this thing together. And I told him that, gee, the only exposure I had to fire and rescue was when we would put on the Kemper, the golf, big golf tournament.
The golf tournament that they would be involved,
Yeah, as a deputy, I was responsible not only for the logistics and the planning, but also the security that I had both fire and police working with me. And so I said, that's my only exposure, understanding that you would be bringing somebody into fire who knows nothing about fire, but knows policy. I'm willing to give it a shot. So they said, well, we're going to nominate you to be the first fire administrator of Montgomery County. I think it was the first civilian administrator of a large fire department, at least that I was aware of.
Okay, hold on, Gordon. Let me slow you down a little bit. Let's get into some of the stuff. You gave us a long little history there. You gave us the overview. I need you to break that down. But you're now okay. We're going to stop you at you became the fire administrator. But to get there, there's a lot of stuff in there. You kind of gave us the Cliff Notes version. But what I want to go back to when you was growing up and you were in Colorado, you went to school. What made you want to go into the military, and how did you decide to go into the military, especially during that time in Vietnam? What made somebody that was an immigrant decide, okay, I want to serve this country? What was the impetus to make you do that? And you did your time and came out and everything worked out. And you look at that time fondly, I'm sure, but what made you want to do that?
Well, I have to laugh at that because it was my failure. All Asian kids are supposed to grow up and be doctors, right?
Right.
Here I was, a Center City kid, and I was, did very well in high school. Captain of the football team, if you could believe that.
All right.
President of the student council. So I had that upward trajectory, and I was supposed to be a doctor. So Colorado College was a land grant college, which meant at the time every male had to take 2 years of ROTC. And so as a student of Colorado College, I took 2 years of ROTC. That timing was perfect because at the end of my second year, I realized that I'm never going to be a doctor. That learning organic chemistry was
you're like, no way.
Yeah. So, and the way that it's set up, that if you continued the last 2 years of college, then you in essence are joining the reserve as a student, and all the coursework that you take in ROTC will lead to becoming a commissioned officer upon graduation. So I did that, and at the end of my 4 years, I received my degree, and then I received the commission in the Army. And then, of course, the Army says, well, where would you like to go? What area of the service would you like? And because of my background, I was aware of the military intelligence service and the role that Japanese Americans had played in the Pacific in helping win the war, so to speak, in the Pacific. So I was very intrigued with military intelligence. So the Army, in fact, designated me to be a military intelligence officer after graduation. Of course, when they asked you, well, where would you like to be assigned? After graduation and after going through infantry officer basic and getting ready, where would you like to go? So I put down Hawaii, California, and Japan, and they got me to the Pacific coast, and I ended up in Vietnam, serving a year
Oh,
and a
wow.
half.
Wow.
So you were in Vietnam.
Yes, it was. Yeah, we were right around. Well, we were assigned to USAR, United States Army Reserve, the large army organization. We were under the G2, who that was the intelligence for USAR, and so we were counterintelligence for Long Binh, the base, as well as intelligence and document security for all the military units in South Vietnam. So I was able to do a little traveling, got to Phu Bai, Nha Trang, Hue, in the course of my work. And so got to see parts of the country in performing my duty in Vietnam.
Okay, cool. So when you get back, you immediately try to go to the government, or is it something that they recruited you, or what did you do?
Again, a funny story. When I was at Colorado College and realized that I'm not going to be a doctor, I happened to take a course in ecology, and the professor at the time was very intrigued that there was a architect called Ian McCarg, Design with Nature, which was to take the natural features of wind, soil, vegetation, and consider that as part of developing cities in America. And at the time, I don't know if you remember the 70s, that's a lot of cities were polluted and in fact, a river caught fire in Pittsburgh, et cetera. So having a lot of desire to sort of change the world as a new graduate and as a veteran, I started looking around, and I said, as I traveled on my way back to Vietnam, I stopped in Japan to travel on my own, and I had the opportunity to also go to Europe. I'm free, right? I could do what I want. So I got very intrigued by the cities that I was seeing, and the services that were provided, how people were moving around, how people were enjoying nature as part of that. So I decided I wanted to be an urban planner. And the University of Colorado offered a degree in public administration, which many people had used to go into urban planning. So while I was working for the city and county of Denver in model cities doing community development, I also was able to get my degree in public administration. And from that's that meant that my career course was going to be working mostly for local government. And I actually love that. Just watching what the state governments do and what the federal governments do, that's not where the rubber hits the road for me. And I love the fact of being directly engaged with the citizens and offering and directing effective services. So that's how I ended up starting to work initially with the city and county of Denver, then going to work for the regional transportation district in the Denver area. And then that led me into operations for various cities.
Oh, okay. So you leave and go to you said you went to Oregon?
Yeah. I went initially from Boulder, where I was the manager of the Denver Boulder inner city system and the small systems in Boulder and Longmont. There was an executive director for the Westport, Connecticut transit system. So I went from 100 buses to 25, but the opportunity there was I was going to be the executive director and report to a board. And friends in the industry kept saying the most important thing is to get that title, executive director, and from there you'll move on. So I went to Westport, Connecticut. Believe it or not, as the executive director of Westport, Connecticut, I was part of the tri-state regional transit coordination thing. So I got to meet the general manager of New York City. Actually had meetings in the Twin Towers there. As here I was, a little old 25 bus transit director, but meeting with all these directors from Philadelphia and New York, et cetera. So I was having the time of my life there. And then I thought, well, it's about time to see if I can find a bigger system. And so Salem, Oregon was creating a brand new district. I submitted my resume and then was selected as the first executive director, first general manager of the Salem Area Mass Transit District. So there were 4 counties in the Salem area that came together to create a transit district. Again, I was having the time of my life, but the big challenge in Salem is every year, local government had to go out to the people to get them to approve their property tax levy. So if you could imagine, community college, schools, local government, transit districts, we all had to go out and ask the public, are you willing to increase your property tax in order for us to either keep up with inflation or to try to grow the services? So that was a shocker to me. But you try to create your community organization to help fund it. You try to, you're out talking to people every day, League of Women Voters, civic organizations, all trying to get them to understand the importance of public transit. And bear in mind, you're at the same forum that public schools are asking for money, and community colleges are asking for money, and the city is asking for money. But some days, some years we didn't get it approved. Sometimes we did. So it's always, if we don't get an increase in our property tax, what services do we have to eliminate in order to stay within that? So again, it was a good lesson in democracy and letting the people speak. And what do you provide, and how do you make sure that they understand what the consequences of their decisions are, and then trying to convince them if they want to improve it, they have to pay a little bit more. So that was what my experience in Salem, Oregon. But then Montgomery County was also an area that when I applied, I thought it was going to be, oh man, we really have to defend the transit service because their budget is property tax based. Yeah. But when I went there, the director of transportation said, "Oh, don't worry. We love multimodal systems here in Montgomery County. We're building this brand new red line to be extended from Bethesda out to Shady Grove. And so there's tremendous support for public transit." And sure enough, there was.
Wow.
Yeah.
At the time, yeah. I mean, as we began to operate and as we provide, Ride On was a neighborhood circulator, as well as Washington Metro operated their bus service in Montgomery County. Yeah. So we got to coordinate them. Our local payment to WMATA was out of my budget.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. So
really?
We coordinated a lot with WMATA, and when they, we were able to make recommendations about changes in their bus routing system. In fact, it was our vision at the time, I had to put together a strategic plan. And so one of the things that we recommended was extending I-270 all the way out to Frederick and offering bus lanes. We
Oh,
suggested,
wow.
well, we ought to have either a rail connection or a busway between Bethesda and College Park along Veers Mill, because that's where the population was. And if we had some high frequency direct bus services between University of Maryland along Veers Mill, we could really build ridership. So there was some good planning. I mean, we had some good people who had some great thoughts, and we had
Well,
some
Yeah.
good
go
directors who
ahead.
really laid the foundation.
I think it's
No, I
safe
mean,
to
so
say, Gordon, if I could, I think it's very safe to say that by the time you come to Montgomery County, you have a wealth of experience
Yeah.
in terms of like city planning, urban planning, especially when it comes to transportation and dealing with people. Especially you said where you had to talk with people like the community directly to say, hey, if you want to increase in the transportation infrastructure, well, then you got to pay a little bit more in taxes. I mean, that's a lot of experience.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the fun part about that job in Westport, Connecticut, I don't know if you're familiar with some of the governance in small
Mm-mm.
towns. That was what they call the representative town meeting. So to get our budget approved, not only did the Board of Supervisors have to approve it, but you had to present your budget in a representative town meeting. And boy, talk about democracy. You would have, one day when the citizens would come in, they would hear the recommendation of the Board of Supervisors. If somebody had any questions about your budget, they would raise up their hand and say, well, gee, you guys didn't pick up my mother for her doctor's appointment, and you were supposed to be there at a certain time. What happened? So in essence, uh, and again, you learn a great deal of humility going through that process. I mean, democracy really works, and you learn about accountability of public service.
Oh, absolutely.
And most important, it's not only the service, but it's also building trust and confidence of the people that the money that they're giving to you will be used effectively and will be used for the purpose it was intended. So again, accountability, trust, and confidence in government was the things that you come away with as a result of those experiences.
Gotcha. So now you take all of that, all of these experiences, all these
Mhm.
lessons that you've learned, and now you're asked to be the fire administrator of Montgomery County
First
Fire and
day.
Rescue. Yes. So
Yeah, and as Lenny Fitch would always say, I bet you it was like drinking water out of a fire hose. And it sure was. I walked in there and, I did what I could. I mean, I, there were two things I think about being the fire administrator was, one, you had to know enough about the fire service and be familiar and communicate with the employees to as effective as you can. But you couldn't cross the boundary of being a chief. Because bear in mind, I had two chiefs. I had a career chief and a volunteer chief. And they were the ones who were really responsible for the operational side of the business, training, hiring, making decisions about union relations, etc. And on the volunteer side, trying to get the volunteers. So I had to be smart enough to understand the business, but cautious enough not to cross the line where I would undermine the authority of the chiefs.
Mhm.
So my first two stories were our first meeting of the fire board. We were getting together and talking about the vision of the future and wanting to go forward. And I recall specifically, John Tippett had sort of prepared me that he was going to ask me a question. And his question was, why is it that the county who pays for most of the engines that are being operated in Montgomery County are painted whatever colors of the local fire department that they're sent to? The people don't know where their money is going to. And I remember responding to him saying, you know what, John, I couldn't say John. I had to acknowledge and recognize a very good question from the audience. And I said, you know, you're right. The citizens of Montgomery County should know what they're paying for. And we really ought to move in the direction of uniform colors for all equipment purchased by Montgomery County so that people know that that's where their money's going to. Immediately, as I recall, a volunteer member
got mad.
Audience, oh, you can't do that. No. You know, we don't do that. That isn't how we do it in Montgomery County. And I said, no, I think we should. Well, we'll sue you. And I said,
really?
Yeah. And I said, well, you know what? Try it. And I think we can defend that from a public policy perspective and move forward. So that I went home that night and I said, this is not going to be an easy meeting. Our meetings are going to last 4 or 5 hours, you know. So I had to prepare my mind. Whenever I had a board meeting, I knew it was going to be a long one. So that was the first one. The second one was we had a meeting of all the chiefs, and again, introducing myself and talking to them and trying to make as nice as I could and try to introduce myself. But the purpose of that meeting was to gather all the 17 volunteer chiefs and the career chief and 2 or 3 of his operations chief, and they would actually sit in a meeting and decide where equipment would be sent for the next week. And I'm saying, so let me understand, we have to sit down for 4 hours every week, and we have to decide where equipment is going to go in order to make sure that we have the equipment in the fire stations for them to respond as needed. And we had 2 or 3 different maintenance. Maintenance was done in some cases by the volunteer fire department.
Yeah.
Coming from transit, I thought, wait a minute, we should have centralized maintenance.
CMF.
And 2, we shouldn't be spending time, you know, trying to negotiate. Well, gee, this engine should be moved from this area to this area, and oh my, this ladder truck, you know, we need to put over here because this one's broken. And I said, that should be done by an operations chief. Why are we wasting our time negotiating and arguing where equipment should go? There seemed to be some vested interest in what equipment should be where and what color should it be. And I thought, wow. Yeah, boy, that's a lot of emotion.
It's politics
wasted that could be directed to operations and other activities. So I knew I was going to have my hand full as I went to these introductory meetings.
Who was the chief under you when you got there? Was it Strock?
Yeah, Strock was appointed career chief, and David Dwyer, God rest his soul, I understand that he just passed away.
Yes.
And David Dwyer was a volunteer chief. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So you're dealing with these meetings between the volunteers and kind of the community, and you got some career involvement and involved as well. What else fell under your purview as the fire administrator? I know you said something about policies, like creating policies, but what else would you have to deal with?
Well, budget was certainly one of the biggest, and that was to present a budget for the Montgomery County Fire Rescue Service. And within the budget, you obviously had personnel, and then under that also was equipment capital investment. So That involved what facilities and equipment do we need to plan for? And some of it involved building new fire stations, and others involved renovation of stations. And then the training academy, what should be invested in terms of training? What sort of planning cycle is there for the retirement, the number of people who are going to retire, the number of people who are on disability? So how many additional firefighters do you need to be able to operate and have a constant flow of new trainees that are coming in? Are we really planning that effectively? And then there was the 911 system that fell under fire rescue at the time.
Yeah, still does.
So it was just, yeah, just looking at all the different functions that the fire department had, and planning to budget for it. And that's where I think I was able to have some influence. As I told the people who were working on the budget, in order to produce a baby, you have to think at least 9 months ahead. And you have to introduce the idea to a lot of other people that you want a baby. So you have to look at the budget cycle is that sometimes you have to plant the seed early, knowing that you're not going to get the money. But then what you do is you plant the seed for need. And what you do is you grow your constituent support from that. So I think that might have been the one thing I helped Fire Rescue look at, is that it's not a matter of what I call the Statue of Liberty, of putting something in your budget, and then if it's cut, you put your arm up and say, oh my God, you're taking away the Statue of Liberty and we won't be able to do anything without the statue. It's so iconic, that you're really hurting us.
Right.
And I advise, that isn't the way to do budgeting, particularly in a public forum, is you put out what you think you're going to need. You tell people what you do need. If you don't get it in that first year, you explain what you can't do. But then the next year you come back with more information about what you could do. And as a result of not being able to do what you couldn't do, this is what happened last year. So this is what we need next year and the year after. So I think putting that philosophy into the people who are helping us do the budget in fire rescue, I think that helped us get a lot of things that we needed.
Yeah, I could see how that's a lot of very forward thinking that I think the fire service definitely needs. I think the fire service can be kind of reactionary at times, but you need that forward thinking of, hey, look, this is what we need. Let's, like you said, let's plant the seed for it, knowing, hey, we may not get it this time, but hey, it's going to come down the line. So I like that.
Yeah. And it's funny, one of my observations when I was a deputy county manager, when I would sit in the budget meetings, is public safety had always used the theory, if you cut us, you'll hurt us. And it became so dramatic that, it would get people angry about, well, I'm sorry, we really do have to cut this. This year, the budget really is tight and we have to cut it. And it'd be so dramatic on the part of public safety that nobody enjoyed going through the budget session on public safety. And I said, to me, budgeting should be looking at the future and trying to figure out how do you steward your resources in a way that it's really going to be helpful. So again, my philosophy was, well, we'll present it. I understand the public policy concerns of being constrained and needing to put money for different priorities. So my theory was always, well, for those of us who get cut, how can we help other departments survive their cuts? And so that we're not looked at the one who was taking away their resources, that we're always a source of help. So at that level, I tried, to position fire, not as the big eggplant that ate Chicago, but really sort of, the department that understands, yes, we have needs and our resource demands are great, but how can we help you? So that was a lot of the things that I did with public health and social services, if I could, to see how could we cross certain boundaries and sort of work together on certain issues.
Good, good. So how long before you said, okay, the idea came for things like question E, where you wanted to, if you can explain question E, and then explain why it was necessary to do it that route and put it on a referendum. And it was important to have a fire chief. I understand as a firefighter or a retired firefighter, I understand I always wanted to be, a fire chief in charge of everything. But how do you explain it in a way that people can take buy-in? So this is important. This is what we need to do besides, every other department that runs a department this size has a fire chief. How did you guys come to that conclusion, and how you sell it? How do you get that to convince other people that was important?
Well, council had adopted the legislation that created a new fire rescue service, and actually, Tony, and I do not know. I do know that the career IAFF was involved in helping negotiate what the final outcome was. I know that the Career Officer Association was very involved, and I do know that the volunteer fire service was very involved. So I think that the final outcome of the legislation, because obviously the push on the part of the career was to get a single command authority, like other fire departments look. And I think the final negotiation, and all things end up being negotiated. And so what the final outcome was, well, let's hire a fire administrator who is not directly responsible for operations. Let him or her be responsible for policy. And then let the career and volunteer fire departments run themselves with a career chief and volunteer chief. So in all cases, negotiations and compromise don't produce everything perfectly. They represent what they can agree upon, and hope it works. So I was the first fire administrator that was brought into that. And fortunately, I think it really helped knowing Doug and Bruce, who were very supportive of things that I was doing in the fire department. It also helped that I had a lot of experience working with council and council staff in terms of making, presentations about what we're doing, or if they had an after action explaining what we did do and what we didn't do. And I think they had a lot of confidence in my being straightforward with them about what we've done and how we can avoid things in the future and what we need to improve. So maybe it was being the right person at the right time. I'm not sure. But certainly I had tremendous support from Doug and Bruce, as well as the council, in terms of things they were doing. And they never jumped in and got in my way. I mean, they could have. I mean, there are a lot of, the volunteers sometimes had direct access to council members. IFF also, IFC also had, IFF, right? Anyway, the union had direct access. And fortunately, as I told council members in private sessions with them, is please tell me what their concerns are, but don't get involved and try to fix it. Let me fix it. If I fail at fixing it, then come and talk to me. And if I don't fix it as quickly than really rake me over the coals. But please don't try to fix it yourself. Let me do that. That's my role.
Gotcha.
Cool.
Gotcha. Now, in all of your doings, because it sounded like you were doing a lot for the department, did you get a chance to go out to any of the firehouses and actually see how, like, the men and women running the calls and what they had to deal with? Did you get to do that at all?
I did. In fact, one of the things that I noticed, when I was transit manager, I always felt that the most important part of providing, there are two parts of being for transit really to work. One is you really had to have good people running the service and providing the service, and they had to know what was going on because people were going to make comments on their buses. And so, to the extent that the bus driver could respond and explain things, as opposed to saying, "Oh, it's just those bureaucrats who just, I wish I could tell you something, but I don't know anything. I'm a mushroom. They keep me in the dark and feed me bullshit, and so I really can't tell you anything." So I decided, and as a transit manager, I was going to try to meet with my transit employees as often as I could. And be available to them and answer questions. And then, of course, I constantly told the transit people, you have to respect the public that you're serving. Whether or not they can pay the fare or not, we're here to provide a service. Respect them and make sure that you treat them. Because one disaffected passenger can affect 10 other people, and we're going to lose ridership. And if we can't produce ridership, then we're not performing a function. So that was my mentality when I went to the fire service. And so I sat there and observed a while. I didn't see any communication coming from the top to the employees. And knowing how the rumor mill works among employees, disaffection happens rapidly if they don't have access to information.
Mhm.
So I tried to make it a point, Russ, to try to go out and have lunch or dinner with each fire station at least once a week.
Wow.
And I
Yeah.
That's
told
great.
the career chiefs or captains that if there's something that they feel that their employees need to hear, invite me out to lunch or invite me to dinner, and I'll sit down with them at the fire at the table and just sit and talk to them and answer any questions they might have. So yes, I tried to get out and interact with them and talk to them. The other thing is I had some pretty good chiefs, Chief Lohr, Chief Finch, Mike Clemens, who would call me in the middle of the night sometimes. And for some reason, they would call me Chief when they woke me up at 3:00 in the morning, right? Hey, Chief, there's something going on. Maybe you ought to come out and take a look. So, yes, I would try to go out to some of the fires, and oftentimes I would ask to be sort of walk around, what's going on, who's doing what, how are you doing, and then always try to talk to the firefighters after they finished about what they saw and what they did and how were they feeling. Did they think their training met the demands of the risks that they were encountering? So yeah, I tried, Russ. I mean, as limited as my time was, but I did try to be accessible as much as I could.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, and especially because Tony's retired, but I'm still working in the fire department, and I know I think I could safely speak for the majority of firefighters still working that we appreciate when people from up top come and interact with us and see what we're doing, see what we're dealing with, and talk to us and tell us what's going on their end, and they let us talk to them about what's going on our end, and just that flow of communication. So I can imagine that the men and women appreciated you doing that.
I have to tell a funny story because Brian Geraci.
Geraci,
You probably
yeah.
all remember Brian, but
Yeah.
as I recall, he was in charge of the arson and fire investigations and bomb squad, as I recall. So, sometime during the first year, he says, "Gordon, why don't you come out and have lunch with the bomb squad and the arson investigators and see what we're doing?" So I said, "Okay." I walk into old station.
Is it 15? Was it 15 at the time?
Okay.
Burnsville?
Anyway, the
No,
roof
it
was
wasn't.
leaking. Yeah. Anyway, the roof was leaking, and these poor guys didn't. Sometimes their bathroom didn't work, and I looked at him and I said, "Brian, you guys are the arson and bomb squad. What are you doing in such a dilapidated building?" And he looks at me and he says, "I know. That's what I've been trying to tell people." And I said, "Well," I said, maybe you're an afterthought, but it sure seems to me the bomb squad ought to be the first thing out of our on our minds, and you guys ought to be happy and be able to respond." So the outgrowth of that was I was able to find money within our existing budget and move the bomb squad out of this dilapidated old firehouse into at least a livable space. So there's some benefit, and I encourage everybody in the fire department to invite your chiefs to come out and have lunch, and particularly if they want them to see something.
Oh yeah, I did that a
Yes.
lot when I was an officer. Yeah,
Mhm.
invited chiefs. I invited elected officials, whoever, come and eat dinner, eat lunch. Yeah, chop it
Mhm.
up with everybody just so they can see how things
Yeah.
work, and people can ask them questions about anything that was on their mind. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what was a major, you were chief, I'm sorry, chief, you were administrator for, you said 9 years almost. What was a major incident that you remember that kind of changed your thought on how things worked, or we need to address this? Or what was a major incident as far as operationally that you thought, okay, we can learn from this and adjust?
Well, one thing that I do recall that really opened my eyes was there was a fire in Germantown, and it started off small, but the wind was really strong.
Mhm.
And as a result of that, as I recall, we lost the house. Nobody was injured, but we lost the house as a result of our not being able to get enough water on it.
Mhm.
And then when the councilman from the area called and said, "Gordon, there's really a lot of turmoil out here. The citizens are really angry at the fire department. Would you come out?" So I sat down with our chiefs and I tried to reconstruct what happened, what was going on. And apparently, the drafting operation,
Oh,
it went into effect. We couldn't get enough water because of the draft. Because of the distance involved, and et cetera, et cetera. In addition to that, I kept asking our staff, was if how much water would it have would have been required to have been able to put out the fire had we responded given the same response time that we had. And it was clear from them, and I asked them to really look hard at the physics of, the wind volume, the fire growth, the nature of construction. Could we, if everything went perfect, have put out the fire? And how much water did we need? And clearly, we could not have performed at that level to get enough water to have put out to put out the fire at time. And so I went out to the community, and I went out and I tried. Here I am, the fire administrator, and none of the other chiefs wanted to go out and talk to the community, because they were afraid that they were so angry. And I said, "Oh no, let's do it. I think I have enough information that I could go out." So I went out. I tried to explain what was happening with the fire. I tried to explain how much water that we had. I tried to explain, and a lot of them said, well, why didn't you knock down my fence and just draft water from the swimming pool? And we had to explain the difficulty of trying to do that with the drafting that we had, and that there wasn't enough water in the swimming pools to even have done that. So when they realized that the risks exceeded our capability, even under the best of circumstances, then we were able at least to let the citizens understand what the difficulties we faced. Fortunately, at that time, Steve Lohr was finishing up his water supply study.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you remember that, Tony, but then, there was a need for 5 tankers.
Yes, I do remember. It was that fly was in Black Rock. Yeah, I remember the fire. Yeah.
Yep. And so, as a result of that, I was able to go to council and I said, well, here's our study. Here's what we're severely lacking in these areas that have water. Clearly, from a development perspective, you could require cisterns as part of any new development, so that's a source of water. Because clearly you don't have hydrants.
No, it's not hydrants. It's 31's area.
Yeah. So at that point in time, we were able to follow up on that, and council approved that we receive 5 tankers in the next year, and then Steve focused on the operational side about how can we improve drafting. He calculated, if we had X number of engines respond in first due in certain areas, we can get X amount of water volume on a fire. And then it would take X amount of time to set up the drafting operation. So X number of engines arriving with the water that they had could respond and at least delay spread. And then the follow-up with the drafting operation could then extinguish. So to me, that opened my eyes a lot about how we needed to think about operations and what we're lacking and what we need. And it just so happened simultaneously that was happening. I don't know if you remember the name Alan Brunacini.
Yes.
Mhm.
Arizona.
Yep.
Yeah.
Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah. Alan invited, I met him at an IFC meeting, International Association of Fire Chiefs meeting, and he couldn't believe that a civilian was running a fire department. So he said, Gordon, why don't you come out to Phoenix? We hold a meeting twice a year with fire chiefs who just sit around a table and talk about their problems and talk about issues. So Brunacini invited me out there, and I became very good friends with him. And so being able to talk with other fire chiefs about what was going on really helped. So they were also my guiding light every once in a while when I would ask a question, and they would say, why don't you think of this, Gordon? Why don't you think of that? So not only did I have help from within the fire department, but I had some pretty good advice from fire chiefs outside the department.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's
really
great.
Good. That is great.
Mhm.
Well, the joke about that was whenever I would come back from a meeting, every Friday I would try to wear an Aloha shirt, right? Because I hated cooking. So the first time I did that, oh, here comes little Bruno, because Bruno would always wear. We were about the same height. Here comes little Bruno. He's going to try to tell us some crazy thing that he got from Bruno. So we'll listen and just pay him lip service. So.
And that actually brings up a good point. I mean, did you encounter a lot of that as you, I guess, networked among other fire chiefs? Because you're a civilian and you're interacting with actual like fire chiefs. So how did that go most of the time?
Well, interesting. I mean, most of the time, whenever I went to an international fire chiefs meeting, there would be a meeting of the metropolitan fire chiefs. So this was the largest fire departments. All the chiefs would meet individually. I mean, they would have a meeting with the metro fire chiefs. And I was able to meet and talk with and actually develop some pretty good camaraderie with the metro fire chiefs, and got some very good support from them. I also remember there was one incident when they were all complaining about a decision being made by the fire administrator or Congress about not funding something, and they were all sitting around complaining. And I turned to them and I said, "Why don't we adopt a resolution sent from the metropolitan fire chiefs and send that to Congress or the fire administrator representing not only the largest fire departments in the nation, but also the populations within you?" They thought that was crazy. So I said, well, let me sit down with a couple of the people and develop a resolution, and let's adopt it before we leave this meeting. And they said, oh, you can't do it in a couple hours. And I said, well, let me try. So I sat down with a couple of people. We we drafted a resolution. We presented it to them. And then they approved it. And it actually turned some heads around at the fire administration that the metropolitan chiefs would actually do this. So after that, I had a little bit of credibility with the metro chiefs, which was helpful. Strangely enough, whenever I would walk into a volunteer meeting of the chiefs, I had no stature. I was not one of them. I didn't understand, and as much as I tried to listen, they just said, you're just too big. You don't understand what we're experiencing. But again, I got to know a couple volunteer fire chiefs that I would look forward and talk to about their recruitment efforts and what they were doing to keep volunteers involved at their station. So that was helpful. But I was a strange duck whenever I would go to these meetings. But I will say, when I met with Bruno and his group, it was really great. Very great camaraderie and great support out of what he called the baggers. And Tony, you might have heard people talk about the baggers, but again, that was a group of sort of out of the box thinking chiefs who would meet twice a year with Bruno. Yeah.
So what was in the resolution? What was the resolution necessarily about?
As I recall, it was, and Tony, it was sort of the first part when I was a fire administrator, and I don't recall if it was some cut of funding out of the fire administration or whether or not the SAFER grant they were being introduced at that time. I mean, on the public transit side, whenever anything would happen with transit funding, we would always adopt a resolution if it affected a certain part of that, and we would send it to Congress. And I was surprised that as big as the metropolitan fire chiefs were, that they didn't use their political influence, one being in charge of a large metropolitan area, and two, the population that they represented, that they never collectively voiced their concerns. I can't remember. I wish I did. I was just stunned me that they didn't want to move into political action.
So you through your 9 years, when you left or you thought about leaving, who came? Was there a fire chief after you, or how did that? I'm trying to clear.
Yeah,
what happened?
Let me explain what happened on that one, Russ and Tony. We were happily moving along, thinking things were normal. 9/11 came.
Yes, sir.
And hit us, very hard. We had units that responded to the Pentagon. We had our bomb squad moving all over, mutual aid in DC. We had some people, we had USAR who responded to the Pentagon. We had some people from the USAR team who went up to New York to help with the incident command. And so clearly our response was tremendous in terms of what we did and how we did it. But throughout that process, in the back of my mind, I kept thinking, what is a civilian fire administrator doing standing in front of the public trying to reassure them that the fire department was more than capable, and they were, to do that. But I just felt, again, like a fish out of water, that a uniformed chief should be the one who's standing in front of the people explaining and calming the waters. So as we were in a council meeting, we were doing a post-evaluation of 9/11 and what we did. And in the process, one of the council members asked, as I recall, Billy Hale was representing the career officers, what should be changed? How can we respond to this new threat that we don't even know the dimensions of? But clearly the world is changing. How should we change? And Billy, God hug him for what he said, was maybe you ought to consider reorganizing the fire department and creating a uniform fire chief. And council then turned to me and said, Gordon, what do you think? And I said, I responded and I said, I think Bill's right. This is the time for us to be a big city fire department, look like a big city fire department, act like a big city fire department, and have a uniform chief. And from that set the stage for council to say, yes, let's adopt new legislation to reorganize the department and create, I think, as I recall, they changed the name back to the Department of Fire Rescue Service as opposed to Montgomery County Fire Rescue Service. They wanted to convey that it was, in fact, a fire department. And so they did that. And I had the good fortune to have some pretty good people under me, Tom Carr,
Yes.
Steve Lohr, and others who I thought could step into the shoes and be a great fire chief after the new legislation was created. And so council adopted it. I was without a job, and the county executive said, well, Gordon, why don't you become my Homeland Security Director? And you'll still stay involved with emergency management and public safety. And at the same time, you could support and backstop whoever the new chief is and just offer some advice and suggestions. So that was, I had a soft landing after I agreed to leave to eliminate the fire administration job.
Kudos to you, man, for saying, let's do the right thing. It's not necessarily good for me, but it's good for the department.
Yeah, that's very, very big of you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it was me. I mean, I guess if I was an egotist, I could have said, "Oh, anybody can handle this." But I think anybody in that position would have realized that there was a time limit for a fire administrator. The role was to bring peace to the valley as much as it could and help negotiate any strife for conflict to keep everything moving forward. But the change in the environment that 9/11 created clearly meant that we couldn't be spending a whole lot of times on the emotional turmoil that often happens with career volunteer departments. The time really had to be spent in planning and assessing new risks, and then what capabilities do we have to develop. And I would venture to say, I would hope to say anybody in my position at that time would have seen that need and would have also done the same thing. But it was clear that 9/11 was going to transform and change all of public safety in a way that we really didn't anticipate at the time. But we had to be positioned to change, to be ready for the change, and to be able to manage that.
Oh, there's no doubt. 9/11 changed everything. Yeah, you guys managed it well. The transition was, I mean, I don't want to say seamless because I'm not involved in the day, but I'm sure it was. How did that transition work? I mean, it's Tuesday, it's a Monday, and they start with a new fire chief. How does that work?
Well, actually, it was very comfortable because I had strongly recommended to Doug and Bruce that they really look at Tom Carr.
Yes.
And Tom was well positioned, having done USAR and he had he was responsible also for the budget while he was under me, so he knew some of the tricks that I left behind for him. So I was very confident that the transition would go very smoothly. And in fact, Tom was very well received by both the career and the volunteers. Tom had some volunteer background.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Well, so again, I think right person at the right time with the right credentials that could really speak to all the elements of the fire service at the time that he was sensitive and he had the experience with, and that he would manage responsibly as a chief. In other words, he wouldn't come in and only be the career chief. He would come in and be the whole chief for both career and volunteers. So I think that helped a lot in the transition. Plus, with Tom's operational background with USAR, his knowledge of incident command, clearly that was one of the things that we needed to work on was incident command and making sure that, as Bruno would always say, incident command has got to outperform the risk and direct. So, and I really felt that Tom could really move. Tom and with the help of Mike Clemens, I think, who created the incident command school, that combination, I think, really helped that transition and move the fire department forward.
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that there probably wasn't a better choice for a first chief than Chief Carr.
No doubt.
We've, as we said, we've had several of these episodes, and Chief Carr, he's mentioned numerous times, and no one had anything but good things to say about Chief Carr. I mean, he's another one where the fire department as we know it would not exist. It would not be in the state that it is without him. So thank you very much for bolstering him to that position.
Right. Supporting him to he's going to succeed in his own, but so someone to say, hey, look at this guy here. He's sharp and he's put together and he's the right man for the job at the right time.
Yeah, I would say, certainly Chief Carr, Chief Lohr, Chief Ale, Brian Geraci. I mean, Bob Steffen from Hazmat. I mean, all these guys really had a vision and put an ego aside. They really wanted to build a modern fire department, and I think letting them move forward was really absolutely, and getting the leadership that supported them was essential. You also have to acknowledge and recognize Mike Clemens. When I came to the fire department, I couldn't believe that we were changing chiefs every 2 years at the training academy. I understood why, that you wanted to get your chiefs exposed to the training academy, but I couldn't understand how we maintain continuity. If a chief every 2 years came in, whatever might be important from one may not be important to the other. So in spite of the opposition expressed by some of the other career chiefs, I made the decision to keep Mike in place the entire time I was fire administrator. Given his vision, given his energy, he was constantly coming up with, hey, they're doing this in Phoenix. Hey, they're doing this in Abbottville. Hey, they're doing this, somewhere else. We need to do this in the training academy. So it was kind of like, Mike, tell me what you need. And if I get in your way, tell me, what can we do to make sure we're doing the best thing possible for training and facilities for fire departments. So, again, I think Mike had tremendous influence on the future of the department as well, as you can see by the new training academy.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
the
A
training
lot
academy.
of these training academy was really driven by Mike, and so kudos to Mike.
Absolutely,
Really
he's one of our
a
guests too.
tremendous leader.
He's on the podcast too. But so you leave, you moved over to FEMA, right? Is that what you're doing now? Was it
No, I was Homeland Security Director
Homeland
for
Security?
Montgomery
Yeah,
County.
Homeland Security. You
Yeah,
move to
for
Homeland Security. How long do you stay
Right.
there before you decide to retire?
I think I stayed there for about 4 years, maybe 3 or 4 years. Anyway, it was I stayed there until Ike Leggett was elected. Ike asked me to help him restructure some county government, and so that was the job that I did for Ike. And then after finishing that, I thought, well, I've been here. If I'm here long enough that I can restructure government, I've been here too long. So I decided I would retire after that.
Gotcha. Okay. And then from there, is that when you moved out to Hawaii?
Yeah. Well, I did some consulting work for 2 or 3 years after that. I worked for a justice and security strategy consulting firm, and most of his work was in public safety. So I had the opportunity to work with the Allied Police Department as a consultant and trying to do some predictive policing. But when it came for me to try to, I'm not a good salesman. I realized I don't know how to tell people you need to buy my time and my expertise. I'm not very good at that as a consultant, I realized. So I thought, well, maybe I ought to get out of consultancy and just retire. So I spent about 4 years with them and then came to Hawaii to relax.
There you
Gotcha.
go.
There it is. So now looking back on your 9 years as fire administrator, what was the most rewarding part of the job for you?
Gosh, thinking back specifically about the fire department, the most rewarding things were the changes I think that we brought on, and then seeing people development to rise to the level of leadership. And I say that for 2 reasons, Russ. One was we did we introduced the wellness program to firefighters and
Yes.
and to change the notion of you needed to bulk up to be fit. We really felt that the demands of the job really meant aerobic conditioning, and then of course we experienced a couple suicides, and
Yes.
seeing the trauma that the organization went through and the resistance of our chiefs were, suicides are part of being a firefighter and being in public safety.
Oh,
And
wow.
that didn't sit with me. So really worked hard, talking with other chiefs, Bruno and others, about the whole mental health side of putting that into place. So we were able to introduce a critical incident stress management, as well as getting a psychologist full time, and trying to really creating what we called at the time the family support network.
Right.
So it was really trying to address the mental health needs of the fire department as well. Addressing the diversity of the fire department and representation of women and minorities, and bringing in CPAT.
Yes, you did.
We
yes.
thought we were going to encounter a whole lot of, but that was embraced. And I remember one meeting that we had, Russ. It was Take Your Daughters to Work Day,
Yes.
and the fire department was featured. And so we brought all the female officers that we had there, just to be able to speak to some of the daughters and talk about a career in the fire service. Somebody then mentioned to me was that we had more women on our stage as officers than the New York Fire Department has, even as women firefighters.
Wow.
Wow.
So I said, yeah. So for us to have, advanced to the point where we were actually having female officers in place, and that took quite a bit of time to get there, right? To have
Right.
to have that sort of I thought was very important. So seeing the things that we introduced, incident command, the incident command bus, seeing how those were received and functionally used by people was very satisfying. But the other side to that was the people who emerged as leaders of the fire department was also very self-satisfying. Again, a funny story about Bruno, right? Bruno and I are sitting down and I'm talking. And I said, Bruno, you had a great influence on the fire department in general. You have fire chiefs who worked under you who are now in 3 or 4 other departments leading as chiefs. Would you consider that to be one of the outcomes that you should measure of being a good chief? And he looked at me and he smiled and he says, well, he said, maybe they want to pretend to be me. And I said, no, you can't be that egotistical. You got to take some pride in the fact that you produced, that you were a good mentor. And he said, no, you're right. So there was one baggers meeting where I had Tom Carr, Steve Lohr, Billy Ale, and Tippett sitting around the table. And I looked at them and I said to them, you know what, guys, I think I've arrived. I'm finally at the level where I could sit down with Bruno and say, hey, we've had people who worked with me that are now leading, who are the leaders of the fire service. And they're not within Montgomery County, they're outside Montgomery County, actually influencing their own department. So I feel as a result of that I arrived. I can at least talk with Bruno and sit with him at the same table and smile back at him and crack a joke about him. So
Right.
That's
Absolutely.
so
man.
those are the things that I take away, from my experience with the fire department.
Gotcha.
Good. Good.
And how would you say your role or your time in the fire department changed you?
Well, as a when you get to be an administrator of a bureaucracy, sometimes the bureaucracy eats your brain, and you think, oh, gee, I've got to think about these very complicated things, and I've got to present them to my staff or to the organization about how complicated it really is. And for some reason, you think, well, gee, if you could represent that you're handling complexity and you're effective at it, they're going to think you're a good leader. My experience to the fire department, and in particularly Bruno, the essence of being able to communicate and motivate is simplicity. And when I first read, you guys have gone through trying to work and develop mission statements, right? When I first read Bruno's mission statement, prevent harm, survive, be nice, that encapsulates everything into 5 words. And simplicity is, in fact, beautiful, is elegant, right? So what I've taken away, and I've found the other thing, and I don't mean to talk about Bruno, but he did have a great influence on me. The other thing that he told me that I took away from him was, Gordon, if they're laughing, they're listening. And so I always felt that it was important that when you interact with people, you listen to them. And if you can get them to laugh, either about their own folly or about you or about a joke that you might tell or their own circumstances, then you've had an impact. So again, those 2 things, simplicity and to get a laugh that you can, those 2 things are things that kind of I've taken away from the fire department. And I love the 9 years I spent with the fire department were the most challenging that I've ever experienced, the most rewarding. And the people I've met through the fire department are probably those that I hold with as close to my heart, and I hold more of them than my other years in other places.
Well,
so clearly, they've
Gordon,
had an
you had a positive effect on a lot of people. You were very influential, more than you could remember, I'm sure, more than you think that you've done. Your influences, people still talk about you, and you've been gone for a while. Just know that, usually we end these podcasts with me saying, thank you for your service. But brother, thank you for your service to the fire department.
Yes.
Well, no, thank you. I and believe it or not, I feel very complimented that I'm still remembered. I didn't think I had that great an influence, but
No, you do.
You did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you
please
did.
know
You did.
I had a lot of fun working with everybody, and I take the joy of their friendship with me, and I hold it dear to my heart. So thank you all for giving me what you gave me.
No problem, brother. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if people wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best way that they could do that?
Well, probably by email. And my email was gord.aoyagi, AOYAGI, 80814 @gmail.com.
Got it.
Gotcha. Well, Fire Administrator Gordon Aoyagi, thank you so very much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and for sharing your stories and for doing all that you did for Montgomery County Fire and Rescue Service.
Yes, thank you, sir, for everything and for setting the table for all of us to eat. Appreciate it.
Well, the thanks should really go to all the people in the fire service who dedicate so much for the safety and protection of the residents of Montgomery County. So I thank you all first for your dedication. So thank you.
All right, brother.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the When the Smoke Clears podcast. Be sure to check out our social media pages on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Just search for the When the Smoke Clears podcast. Feel free to email us at whenthesmokeclears8@gmail.com. That's whenthesmokeclears and the number 8@gmail.com. You can also support the show by going to the website buymeacoffee.com/whenthesmokeclears and donating however much you'd like.